The morning fog rolled across the naval base as Sarah Martinez laced up her combat boots for what would become the most defining day of her military career. At 26, she had already broken more barriers than most soldiers twice her age, but the whispers followed her everywhere she went. The other recruits called her the experiment behind her back, referring to the military's new initiative to integrate women into elite special operations units. Sarah had grown up in a small Texas town where her father ran an auto repair shop and her mother worked double shifts at the local diner. From an early age, she learned that respect wasn't given freely. It had to be earned through sweat, determination, and proving yourself when others doubted you. Her childhood was spent competing with the neighborhood boys in everything from tree climbing to basketball, usually coming out on top despite being smaller and supposedly weaker. When she turned 18, Sarah shocked her family by announcing she was joining the military instead of accepting the partial scholarship to community college. Her father, a Vietnam veteran himself, understood her calling even if her mother worried about sending her only daughter into harm's way. Basic training had been brutal, but Sarah thrived under pressure. She graduated at the top of her class and immediately volunteered for the most challenging assignments available. The path to special operations had been anything but smooth. Every instructor seemed determined to prove that women didn't belong in combat roles. They increased her physical requirements, scrutinized her every move, and waited for her to crack under the pressure. Instead, Sarah used their doubt as fuel. She trained harder than anyone else, studying tactics late into the night, and pushing her body beyond what she thought possible. Captain Reynolds, the base commander, had been watching Sarah's progress with growing interest. Unlike many of his peers who remained skeptical about women in combat roles, Reynolds believed in merit over gender. He had seen too many capable soldiers overlooked because they didn't fit the traditional mold. When the Pentagon announced they were looking for candidates to participate in a joint training exercise with Navy SEALs, Reynolds knew exactly who he wanted to recommend. The announcement came during morning formation. Sarah stood at attention as Reynolds read the list of selected personnel for the upcoming exercise. When her name was called, she felt a mixture of pride and anxiety wash over her. This wasn't just another training mission. It was a test that would determine whether women could truly compete alongside the military's most elite units. Lieutenant Jake Morrison, one of the other selected candidates, approached Sarah after formation. Jake was everything the military recruiting posters advertised: tall, muscular, and confident to the point of arrogance. He had been vocal about his opposition to women in combat roles, often citing physical limitations and unit cohesion concerns. Well, Jake said with a smirk. Looks like you got your chance to play with the big boys, Martinez. Hope you can keep up when things get real. Sarah looked him directly in the eyes, her voice steady and calm. I've been keeping up just fine so far, Morrison. Maybe you should worry about your own performance. The tension between them was obvious to everyone watching. This wasn't just about individual performance anymore. It represented a larger debate happening throughout the military about the future of combat operations. News of the joint exercise spread quickly through the base. Some soldiers expressed genuine curiosity about how the training would go, while others placed bets on how long Sarah would last before requesting transfer back to a support role. The pressure was immense, but Sarah had learned long ago not to let other people's expectations define her limits. Colonel James Patterson arrived 3 days before the exercise was scheduled to begin. Patterson was a legend in special operations circles, having led numerous classified missions during his 25-year career. His reputation for toughness was matched only by his reputation for fairness. Unlike many senior officers who formed opinions based on preconceptions, Patterson believed in letting performance speak for itself. During the initial briefing, Patterson outlined the exercise parameters. The selected personnel would be divided into small teams and tasked with completing a series of challenging scenarios designed to test everything from physical endurance to tactical decision-making. The Navy SEAL instructors would evaluate each participant's performance, and their assessments would influence future policy decisions regarding women in special operations. Sarah spent the evening before the exercise reviewing mission protocols and checking her equipment. She knew that every movement would be scrutinized, every decision analyzed for signs of weakness or hesitation. The weight of representing all women in the military felt heavy on her shoulders, but she refused to let it overwhelm her focus. That night, she called her parents from the base phone. Her mother's voice was filled with worry, asking if she was eating enough and staying safe. Her father's advice was simpler. Remember what I taught you about fixing engines. Sometimes the smallest parts are the most critical. Don't let anyone convince you that size determines value. The conversation reminded Sarah of all the people who had believed in her journey, even when the path seemed impossible. Her high school track coach, who encouraged her to try out for the boys' cross-country team when the girls' program was canceled due to budget cuts. The drill sergeant who pulled her aside during basic training and told her she had what it took to be special. The fellow soldiers who had gradually learned to see her as a capable teammate rather than a liability. As dawn approached, Sarah performed her usual morning routine: physical training, equipment check, and mental preparation. She had developed these habits during her years of service, understanding that consistency and discipline were just as important as raw talent. Other soldiers often joked about her methodical approach, but Sarah knew that attention to detail could mean the difference between success and failure when stakes were high. The exercise would begin in just a few hours, and Sarah felt ready. She had trained for this moment her entire military career, proving herself at every level and overcoming obstacles that would have defeated lesser soldiers. Now she faced the ultimate test, not just of her own abilities, but of whether the military was truly ready to embrace change. The base was unusually quiet that morning, as if everyone understood the historical significance of what was about to unfold. Sarah walked toward the assembly point, her head held high and her resolve stronger than ever. Whatever happened in the coming days, she was determined to give everything she had and let her performance speak louder than any doubts or criticisms. Behind her, the sun rose over the training grounds where she would soon face the most challenging test of her career. The questioning looks and skeptical comments had followed her this far, but Sarah Martinez was ready to prove that power came in many forms, and that determination could overcome any preconceived limitation. The assembly point buzzed with nervous energy as 42 military personnel gathered for the joint exercise briefing. Sarah arrived early, positioning herself where she could observe both the SEAL instructors and her fellow candidates. The Navy SEALs stood apart from the regular military personnel, their reputation for excellence evident in their confident posture and alert expressions. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Webb stepped forward to address the group. Webb was a 15-year veteran of special operations, his weathered face telling stories of missions that would never appear in official reports. His reputation among the SEALs was legendary, fair but demanding, with zero tolerance for weakness or excuses. "Ladies and gentlemen," Webb began, his voice carrying easily across the assembly area. "Over the next 72 hours, you will be pushed beyond your comfort zones. This exercise is designed to evaluate your potential for special operations work. Some of you will excel, others will discover their limitations. That's not a failure. It's valuable information for military planning." Sarah listened intently as Webb outlined the exercise structure. Teams of 6 would rotate through different scenarios: urban warfare simulation, long-distance reconnaissance, hostage rescue, and survival training. Each scenario would test different aspects of special operations work, from physical endurance to tactical thinking under extreme pressure. The team assignments were announced alphabetically. Sarah found herself grouped with Morrison, 2 experienced sergeants named Collins, and Rodriguez, a communications specialist named Thompson, and a medic named Davis. Morrison's expression made his displeasure obvious, but the other team members seemed focused on the mission rather than gender politics. Sergeant Collins, a 10-year veteran with combat experience in 3 different theaters, approached Sarah during the brief equipment check period. "I've heard good things about your performance in training," he said quietly. "Don't let the politics get in your head. Focus on the mission, watch your teammates' backs, and let your work speak for itself." The advice resonated with Sarah because it echoed what her father had taught her years ago. In his auto repair shop, customers didn't care about the mechanic's gender. They cared whether their car ran properly when they drove it home. Military operations should work the same way, judged by results rather than assumptions. The first scenario began at dawn the following morning. Teams were inserted into a mock urban environment constructed specifically for training purposes. The buildings were real, complete with multiple floors, hidden passages, and realistic details that made the simulation feel authentic. Each team received intelligence about a high-value target located somewhere within the complex, along with information about hostile forces protecting the area. Sarah's team moved methodically through the urban maze, using hand signals and coordinated movements that demonstrated their training. Morrison took point position, while Sarah covered the team's 6 o'clock position, watching for threats approaching from behind. The SEAL instructors observed from concealed positions, taking notes on individual performance and team dynamics. Halfway through the scenario, the team encountered their first major challenge. Intelligence reports had missed a heavily defended checkpoint that blocked their primary route to the target building. Collins called for a tactical pause while the team assessed their options. "We could try the eastern approach," Morrison suggested, studying his map. "It's longer, but probably less defended." Rodriguez shook his head. "Time constraints won't allow for a longer route. We need to find a way through or around this checkpoint." Sarah had been studying the building layouts during their approach march. She noticed something the others had missed: a maintenance tunnel system that connected several buildings in the complex. The tunnels weren't marked on their tactical maps, but she had spotted the entrance points during their reconnaissance. "There's another option," Sarah said, pointing to a barely visible grate near the base of an adjacent building. "Maintenance tunnels. I spotted entry points in 3 different locations. We could bypass the checkpoint entirely by moving underground." Morrison looked skeptical. "Those tunnels could be defended too. Plus, we'd be moving blind into unknown territory. Less likely to be defended than the obvious approaches," Collins observed. "The question is whether the tunnels actually connect to our target building." Sarah had already considered that problem. Based on the building ages and construction patterns, the tunnel system should connect all the structures in this block. It's a risk, but probably better odds than a frontal assault on the checkpoint. The team debated quickly, aware that time pressure was part of the evaluation criteria. Finally, Collins made the decision. "Martinez's plan has merit. Let's try the tunnel approach. If it doesn't work out, we still have time to attempt the eastern route." The tunnel system proved even more extensive than Sarah had predicted. The team moved in single file through the narrow passages, using night vision equipment to navigate the darkness. Sarah took point position for this phase, since she had spotted the tunnel system initially and had the best understanding of its layout. Navigation underground required different skills than surface movement. Sarah relied on her sense of direction and mental mapping abilities gained through years of orienteering training. She counted steps, noted turns, and mentally tracked their progress toward the target building. The tunnel system included several decision points where multiple passages intersected, requiring quick judgment calls about which direction to pursue. After 20 minutes of underground movement, the team emerged inside the target building's basement level. They had successfully bypassed all external defenses and positioned themselves within striking distance of their objective. The SEAL instructors later described it as one of the most creative tactical solutions they had observed during the exercise. The team moved upward through the building, clearing each floor systematically. Sarah's performance during the building clearing phase impressed even Morrison, who had initially doubted her tactical abilities. She demonstrated excellent field awareness, quick reaction times, and steady performance under pressure. The target was located on the 4th floor, protected by simulated hostile forces using laser tag equipment. The team's approach required careful coordination and precise timing. Sarah and Thompson created a distraction at the building's main entrance while the rest of the team accessed the target floor through an external window. The plan worked perfectly. Within minutes, the team had neutralized all hostile forces and secured their objective. The entire scenario had taken 2 hours and 15 minutes, well within the acceptable time parameters and significantly faster than most teams achieved. During the debrief session, Chief Webb specifically praised the team's innovative approach to the checkpoint problem. Creative tactical thinking is exactly what we look for in special operations candidates, he told the group. You've demonstrated the ability to adapt when initial plans encounter unexpected obstacles. Morrison approached Sarah after the debrief ended. His attitude had shifted noticeably since the beginning of the exercise. That tunnel idea was solid, he admitted. I wouldn't have thought to look for that option. Good call. The acknowledgement meant more to Sarah than Morrison probably realized. It represented a crack in the wall of skepticism that had surrounded her military career. If she could earn respect from someone who had initially opposed her presence, it suggested that performance really could overcome prejudice. The second scenario took place that afternoon, a long-distance reconnaissance mission that would test navigation skills, physical endurance, and the ability to gather intelligence without being detected. Teams were inserted 12 miles from their objective with instructions to observe and report on simulated enemy activity without compromising their position. Sarah's team moved across varied terrain that included dense forest, open fields, and rocky hills. The mission required maintaining a rapid pace while staying concealed from roving patrols equipped with thermal imaging equipment. Physical demands were significant, but Sarah had trained specifically for this type of endurance challenge. As the team navigated through a particularly dense section of forest, they encountered unexpected difficulty. Rodriguez injured his ankle when he stepped into a concealed depression, and the injury was severe enough to affect his mobility. The team faced a critical decision about how to proceed while maintaining their mission timeline. Sarah volunteered to carry Rodriguez's additional equipment weight, allowing him to focus on movement despite his injury. The extra burden added approximately 30 pounds to her load, but she maintained pace without complaint. Her teammates noticed the gesture, recognizing it as exactly the kind of sacrifice that defined true unit cohesion. The reconnaissance phase required the team to establish an observation post within 1,000 meters of their target, while remaining undetected for 4 hours. Sarah's skills proved valuable during this phase as well, as her smaller physical profile allowed her to establish positions that would have been impossible for larger team members. From their concealed position, the team gathered detailed intelligence about enemy patrol patterns, defensive positions, and potential vulnerabilities. Sarah's attention to detail proved crucial when she spotted a weakness in the perimeter security that other observers had missed, a brief gap in surveillance coverage that occurred every 47 minutes when guard shifts changed. The information they gathered would have allowed a follow-up assault team to penetrate the target facility with minimal resistance. Chief Webb later described their intelligence report as one of the most thorough and actionable products submitted during the exercise. By evening, Sarah's team had completed 2 scenarios with excellent results. Word was spreading throughout the exercise that the team with the female soldier was performing exceptionally well. Some attributed their success to luck, others to the strength of the male team members, but the SEAL instructors were keeping more careful track of individual contributions. Colonel Patterson had been monitoring the exercise progress from the command center, reviewing performance reports and video footage from each scenario. Sarah's consistent excellence was becoming impossible to ignore, even for skeptics who had predicted her failure. The real test, however, would come during the final scenario, a complex hostage rescue simulation that would push every team member to their absolute limits. The final morning arrived with unexpected weather complications. A severe thunderstorm had moved through the area overnight, leaving the training grounds muddy and treacherous. The hostage rescue scenario would proceed as planned, but the environmental conditions would add another layer of difficulty to an already demanding exercise. Colonel Patterson gathered all participants for the final briefing. His presence indicated the importance of this concluding phase, and his reputation for observational skills meant that every action would be analyzed and remembered. Patterson had arrived at the base with preconceptions about women in combat roles, but 3 days of watching Sarah's performance had begun to challenge his assumptions. "The scenario is straightforward," Patterson announced to the assembled teams. "Intelligence reports indicate that 3 high-value assets are being held in a fortified compound. Your mission is to infiltrate the facility, neutralize hostile forces, and extract all 3 assets without casualties. You have a 4-hour window before enemy reinforcements arrive." The compound was the most sophisticated training facility Sarah had ever encountered. Multiple buildings connected by covered walkways, watchtowers positioned at strategic points, and realistic defensive positions that mimicked actual terrorist strongholds. The facility had been used to train Navy SEALs for real-world missions, and the level of detail was extraordinary. Team assignments for the final scenario had been reshuffled to test different combinations of personnel. Sarah found herself with 5 soldiers she had never worked with before, including 2 members of other teams who had expressed doubts about her capabilities. The challenge of building instant team chemistry while executing a complex mission would test leadership skills as much as tactical abilities. Staff Sergeant Williams, the senior member of Sarah's new team, had 23 years of military experience and a reputation for blunt honesty. During the brief planning session before insertion, he addressed Sarah directly. "I've heard about your performance in the previous scenarios," Williams said. "Good work. For this mission, I want you handling communications and serving as our primary spotter. Your size advantage for concealment positions makes you our best option for gathering real-time intelligence." The assignment was both a compliment and a challenge. Communications specialists needed to maintain contact with multiple sources while processing tactical information under extreme pressure. Spotters required exceptional observational skills and the ability to make split-second decisions that could determine mission success or failure. Sarah's team approached the compound using an infiltration route that avoided the most obvious defensive positions. The muddy conditions created by the storm worked to their advantage, as the sound of their movement was masked by residual wind and dripping water. Sarah established her observation position in a cluster of trees that provided excellent sight lines to the main compound. From her concealed position, Sarah observed patrol patterns and defensive positions for 30 minutes before the team began their assault phase. She identified weaknesses in the perimeter security and spotted the locations where hostages were most likely being held. Her intelligence reports guided the team's tactical decisions throughout the mission. The assault phase began with a coordinated approach from multiple directions. Sarah provided overwatch and communication support while her teammates moved to their assigned positions. Her radio discipline was exceptional, providing clear and concise updates without cluttering the communications net. Halfway through the assault, the mission encountered serious complications. One team member was killed by defensive fire, and another was wounded severely enough to require immediate medical attention. The simulated casualties reduced the team's effective strength and forced rapid adaptation of their tactical plan. Sarah volunteered to move from her overwatch position to join the assault team directly, replacing the killed team member. The transition required her to leave her concealed position and cross open ground under simulated enemy fire. She moved with speed and precision, reaching the assault team's position without being hit by the laser tag systems. The team's assault on the main building required precise coordination and excellent marksmanship. Sarah's performance during the building clearing phase exceeded even her teammates' elevated expectations. She demonstrated exceptional weapon handling skills and tactical awareness that impressed the watching SEAL instructors. The first 2 hostages were located and secured without incident, but the third proved more challenging. Intelligence reports had incorrectly identified the location, and valuable time was spent searching the wrong areas of the compound. With reinforcement time approaching rapidly, the team faced pressure to either abandon the third hostage or risk mission failure. Sarah suggested a different approach based on her observations during the initial reconnaissance phase. She had noticed unusual activity around a building that wasn't identified in their intelligence briefing, subtle indicators that suggested it might be housing additional personnel. The intelligence missed something, Sarah told Williams during a brief tactical pause. Building 3 has been receiving regular visits from guard personnel, but it's not supposed to contain anything important. That pattern doesn't make sense unless they're checking on something valuable. Williams considered her analysis quickly. You think the third hostage is in Building 3? It's the only explanation that fits the observed behavior patterns, Sarah replied. The guards have been maintaining irregular schedules everywhere else, but Building 3 gets checked every 45 minutes like clockwork. That suggests something important enough to require constant supervision. The team decided to investigate Sarah's theory, knowing that time constraints meant they wouldn't have opportunity for multiple attempts. The approach to Building 3 required crossing the most heavily defended area of the compound, where multiple guard positions could provide overlapping fields of fire. Sarah volunteered to create a diversion that would draw defensive attention away from the building while her teammates approached from an alternate direction. The plan required her to expose herself to significant risk, but offered the best chance of mission success within their time constraints. The diversion involved Sarah simulating an assault on the compound's main gate, using smoke grenades and aggressive movement to create the impression of a larger force. The tactic worked perfectly, drawing defender attention away from Building 3 and allowing her teammates to approach undetected. While Sarah maintained pressure on the main defensive position, her teammates successfully infiltrated Building 3 and located the third hostage. The coordination required split-second timing and flawless communication, but the team executed the plan without errors. The extraction phase proved equally challenging. With all 3 hostages secured, the team needed to move them to the designated pickup point while avoiding pursuit by the facility's remaining defenders. Sarah's knowledge of the compound layout, gained during her extended observation period, proved invaluable for selecting escape routes. The team completed their mission with 8 minutes remaining before the reinforcement deadline. All hostages were successfully extracted, and no team members had been killed or wounded during the final assault phase. The performance was exceptional by any standard, and the SEAL instructors were visibly impressed by the coordination and tactical execution they had witnessed. During the immediate debrief, Chief Webb specifically praised the team's adaptability and innovative problem-solving. The decision to investigate Building 3 based on behavioral pattern analysis showed exactly the kind of tactical thinking we value in special operations. That observation potentially saved the entire mission. Colonel Patterson had watched the final scenario from multiple vantage points, moving throughout the compound to observe different aspects of the team's performance. His final assessment would carry significant weight in determining future policy regarding women in special operations roles. After all teams had completed their scenarios, Patterson gathered the SEAL instructors for an extended debrief session. The discussion lasted nearly 2 hours as they analyzed performance data and compared results across all participants. Sarah's name came up frequently in the conversation, and always in positive contexts. That evening, Patterson requested a private meeting with Sarah. She reported to his temporary office with some nervousness, uncertain whether the conversation would be positive or negative. Patterson's expression was unreadable as he reviewed the thick file of performance reports from the 3-day exercise. Sergeant Martinez, Patterson began, I came to this exercise with certain expectations about what we would observe. You have challenged those expectations in ways I didn't anticipate. Sarah maintained her military bearing while waiting for Patterson to continue. The colonel's reputation suggested that his words would be chosen carefully and would carry significant meaning for her career. Your performance over the past 3 days has been exceptional, Patterson continued. More importantly, your presence seemed to elevate the performance of every team you worked with. That's a rare quality in any soldier, regardless of gender. The conversation continued for 20 minutes as Patterson asked detailed questions about Sarah's training, her career goals, and her thoughts about the future of women in combat roles. His questions suggested genuine interest in her perspective rather than skeptical probing for weaknesses. As the meeting concluded, Patterson made a statement that would change Sarah's career trajectory forever. I'm recommending you for selection to the Special Operations Training Pipeline. If you accept, you'll begin advanced training in 6 months. The recommendation carries my full endorsement. News of Patterson's recommendation spread quickly through the base. Some soldiers expressed surprise, others celebration, and a few continued to harbor doubts about women in elite military units. For Sarah, the recommendation represented validation of years of hard work and determination to prove herself in a challenging environment. The joint exercise concluded with a formation ceremony where outstanding performers were recognized publicly. Sarah's name was called multiple times as various awards were presented, but the moment she treasured most was the handshake she received from Chief Webb. "You've got what it takes," Webb told her quietly. "The SEALs would be lucky to have someone with your abilities and work ethic. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." As Sarah packed her equipment for return to regular duties, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. The doubts and questions about her capabilities hadn't disappeared entirely, but she had proven that performance could overcome prejudice when given the opportunity. Lieutenant Morrison approached her during the final equipment check. Their relationship had evolved significantly over the 3 days, moving from skepticism to mutual respect. "I owe you an apology," Morrison said. "I made assumptions that weren't fair or accurate. You've proven that capability comes in different packages than I expected." The acknowledgement meant more to Sarah than any official recognition. It represented the possibility that minds could change when confronted with evidence that challenged preconceived notions. 6 months later, Sarah began the Special Operations Training Pipeline as the first woman ever selected for the program. The challenges ahead would be even more demanding than anything she had faced previously, but she approached them with confidence gained through proving herself when others questioned her power. Colonel Patterson's final report on the joint exercise became required reading for senior military leadership. His conclusions about talent assessment and the value of judging soldiers by performance rather than assumptions influenced policy decisions that opened new opportunities for women throughout the military. Years later, Sarah would look back on those 3 days as the turning point in her career. The exercise had tested more than her individual capabilities. It had challenged an entire institution to reconsider its assumptions about what made an effective soldier. Through determination, skill, and unwavering commitment to excellence, she had proven that questioning someone's power often revealed more about the questioner than the questioned.